Oregon brings an offense averaging over 40 points per game into the Coliseum to face the red-hot USC Trojans. Coverage begins Saturday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, presented by Dr. Pepper.
On the show, Tim Kalishaw, Kevin Blackistone, Kate Fagan. Hello, everybody. Today,
do it.
Game 7. Also, a ranking of much significance and a slump of undetermined significance, but you will determine it, national panel. Clanking Clay. Let's go around the horn.
Hey.
We should have done that in claymation. That we should have done.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reale.
The greatest win in the last 107 years of Cubs baseball, but you know what we're starting with. Cubs Twitter knows what we're starting with.
Retweet.
Chapman in the 7th in a 5-run game. Still in the 8th in a 5-run game. Still in the 9th in a 7-run game. 20 pitches, 62 over his last 3 days. Joe Maddon says he's expecting more of the same tonight. Ramona, did Joe Maddon go too far with Chapman last night if he's wanting more of the same tonight in a little game they call Game 7?
No, that was perfect. You know what? They had the Indians had the heart of their lineup up. You want your closer in before things get nasty, right? You want your best guy on the mound in that spot. It was 7-2 at that point. And I know that seems like they had a big lead and they should save him for Game 7. You have to get to Game 7. And if you're the Cubs with all that history, with everything riding on this, put your best guy in to face their best guy.
Tim Kalishaw, you agree?
No, I got to say it was a desperate move. I understand why he did it, and I think they were one batter away from needing to do it, and he did it a little too early. Because if you're watching that game and it's 7-0 early, all the Indians are thinking, is there any way we can score enough runs? We're going to be able to save our bullpen because we're behind. Is there any way we can score enough runs to get Chapman on the field? And they only scored 2, and they did it anyway. And he had to warm up 3 different times because they didn't get somebody ready fast enough after the home run in the 8th. Chapman had to go out and pitch the 9th. That's a lot of pitches.
Kevin Blackstone?
Look, that 7th inning, Montgomery comes out, right, and he gives up a walk. Then there's a single by Kipnis. Next thing you know, Lindor, who has been a thorn in their side, is at the plate. I think he was absolutely correct to go to Chapman at that point because there was a fire and he needed someone to stamp it out. And that's exactly what he did. I know people up in Baltimore are going, that's exactly what we would have done in that situation. You know, you don't want Zach Britton sitting around. You don't want Chapman to be a Zach Britton sitting around watching things happen. Now, the other part of that is you maybe could have pulled him in the 8th after he got through that and then turned the ball over to somebody else after you breathed a sigh of relief just to save a few pitches for him going ahead. But you know what? He's thrown 20 pitches before and come back the next day and pitch this season. Not anything new for him.
Kate Fagan, how do you see it?
The right move by Maddon. I mean, we've spent this postseason praising the ingenuity of Francona about how he's using his bullpen. And why we've praised him is because of this philosophy that no inning is more important than the current inning. And that's what Francona seems to have believed this entire postseason. And so if you're going to save something, right, if you're going to save innings, arms, sunflower seeds, you better be sure that you're saving it because there is an absolute destination in which you will need that equipment and that energy. And certainly that happens in the regular season. You know you're going to need it. But here, you don't know until you get there. And you have to think, if you're Joe Maddon, that whatever energy you spent last night that deficit is going to be made up simply by the adrenaline and the historic nature of tonight's game.
Okay, I could buy that a little bit, but over 60 pitches in the last 3 days. He's seen 15 batters just last night, and then the game before that, just about the same number. So that's guys seeing him again. What type of Chapman do you expect tonight, Ramona?
Well, it's Game 7. I mean, if this was in the middle of the season, you'd worry a little bit more about the workload on him. But this is Game 7. This is the last game of the year. You just go out and play. And I think we've really redefined the way closers have been used in this postseason. I mean, you saw what Dave Roberts did with the Dodgers and Kenley Jansen, bringing him in the spot where they needed him. The only thing I worry about if I'm the Cubs is what did that signal to the rest of the bullpen? What did the fact that they've relied on Chapman in these spots say to the rest of the guys in that bullpen about Joe Maddon's faith in them?
So you're a little bit worried about feelings going into a Game 7, okay? How about you, Kalisha?
We're going to see a very familiar Chapman, and that's the point bigger than the fatigue. The Indians are seeing this guy a lot, but I also agree with A-Rod. A-Rod says as a former teammate, he knows he's not comfortable doing this. He may be going along with it, but he's not used to it, and it's not what he likes to do.
Mm-hmm. Look at you guys. I'm not sensing the excitement. This is a Game 7 here. This is one of the biggest moments in sports history. No matter what happens, you're not in the mood. You get in the mood. Listen up, America. Yesterday is history, and tomorrow is a mystery. Today is just a gift, which is why it's called the present. It's also going to be painful for one of these fan bases, which is why it's called now. The 38th Game 7 in World Series history. Kate, how do you process what's at stake, and how will tonight be won?
I'm leaning towards the Indians taking it. And here's why. Because the Cubs would need to make an adjustment that they simply have not made for the entire season. I mean, we've talked so much about how potent that offense is. Well, guess what? They are 30th in Major League Baseball at making contact on breaking balls. And guess who's on the mound? Kluber. Guess what? In Game 4, he got the Cubs to chase 51% of the balls outside of the zone. And so I certainly think the Cubs are capable of making the adjustment, but nothing that I've seen against Kluber or in their history throughout the regular season suggests it's a definite. I mean, you just have to look at Baez at this point. I mean, his World Series alone, he's 12 for 21, and of those at-bats, like 6 of them, he was chasing a breaking ball outside of the zone, and that's kind of a microcosm for what this Cubs series has looked like.
So you're addressing recent history, postseason history, this is regular season history, but there's a whole lot more history here. 170 years combined of jinxes and hexes and Kevin Blackistone. How do you think it all plays out tonight?
No, I like the Indians, too, and no knock on the Cubs, but I just like Kluber, I like Andrew Miller, and I like Allen. And I like the fact that Kluber's been virtually unhittable his last 30 innings in the postseason, right? .89 ERA coming into the World Series, and with a 2-0 record in this World Series, and an ERA even lower at .75, 15 strikeouts, 9 innings. This guy is about as good as we've ever seen. And giving the ball to Andrew Miller, who, by the way, I don't think he hasn't pitched since Saturday, so you compare that to Chapman if you're concerned about that, and then getting the ball to Allen. I just like the fact that they've got those arms lined up to go, and even though Kluber's on short rest, he's only got to go 4 or 5 innings tonight, maybe not even 5.
2 for Cleveland now. How about you, Tim Kalishaw?
Okay, I started out with Indians in 6. I was wrong. Do what you have to do, Mr. Scorekeeper. But here's the point. In hindsight, we can now see this series had to go 7 because as big a story as it is for whoever wins, sadly, it's as big a story for whichever fan base is still going to continue the losing. And what better way to suffer than to lose a Game 7 when you got that close, whoever it is, whether it's the Indians blowing a 3-1 lead or the Cubs coming all the way back and still coming up short. I tend to agree with the first 2 panelists. I'll take Kluber for, he's never pitched more than 6 innings. I'll take him to go 5 and 50 pitches from Andrew Miller. That's going to trump, I think, whatever Hendricks can do trying to be better than he was in Game 3.
3 for Cleveland. Ramona Shelburne, the floor is yours.
Yeah. I feel like I just got to represent for Chicago right now. Nobody picked Chicago. Wow. Look, the Cubs have been the best team in baseball all season long. And I think they got to this World Series, and when they go down 3-1, the last couple of games, it felt like they were playing to stay alive. Now you're playing to win. And they finally have that same mentality that they had all year long, where they were playing to win. They have the best team. If you go down that lineup, they have the best team, top to bottom, in baseball. And once they got past trying to play defensively in this series, like I felt like Cleveland had put so much pressure on them in those games where they were up 3-1. When they got up 3-1, the Cubs got past that. And now all the momentum is there. Like if you're Cleveland right now, you've lost 2 in a row, and now you might be the team that blows the 3-1 lead. I like Chicago.
Let me ask you this question. What's the better story from a historical perspective? And if you're a writer, you're covering this game, what's the better story, Kate?
I mean, I like right now, if I'm going recent history, of Cleveland winning after the Cavs won and perhaps reversing that
Ramona
curse.
shakes her head no to that.
I like that.
No, the better story is the Cubs. I mean, I've spent the entire season looking at old people in the stands in Chicago who might die before the Cubs win a World Series. Like, that is the story of the year. And I don't know what story in baseball is more compelling than the Cubs.
Tim Kalishaw, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, the story, though, was the Cubs getting to the World Series, first time in 71 years. We saw that. We don't need to get rid of this other storyline. We can continue the 108 years and keep it going.
I like keeping some storylines up.
And we can connect the
1908.
Cavaliers to the Indians.
Blackistone?
There was no question. It's the Cubs, 1908. That's the entire story.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen the Indians get this far in recent memory, though we haven't seen them win it. But no, it's absolutely the Cubs.
You know, there's a first pitch tonight. You guys brought up Cleveland and the Cavaliers because the 3-1, of course, that's so poetic. Wouldn't you love to see LeBron throw out the first pitch?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you think that would be a cool thing? The crowd would get into that. They're doing Jim Tomey, who's one of the greats of the last 30 years. But LeBron,
Have the winner do it.
or you ask Aroldis Chapman to throw out the first pitch. And then you ask him to throw out a few more just to work his arm in a little more. Just get a
for
few
the
more picks down on
photographers.
there. All right, those are the picks. The picks they make,
still
the
want
minutes
Ricky
they
Vaughn.
take, or the points they get. We got a Game 7 tonight. How good is it? Taking a break right here. Buy or sell is next.
This is Larry Culpepper, and if you love college football as much as I do, enough to invent the playoff, you're welcome. Do yourself a favor and subscribe to the Championship Drive podcast in the Listen tab of your ESPN app. App is short for app.
Buy or sell.
NFL news of the day. The Vikings are out an offensive coordinator. Norv Turner resigning this morning. He says it's in the best interest of the team, and he has great respect for Coach Mike Zimmer. Tim and Kevin, you know Norv from your time in Dallas many years ago. We'll start with you, Kalisha. How do you consider that statement, and what does a midweek resignation mean for a first-place team that's listening right now?
Very strange. I'm going to sell that this is going to turn the Viking offense around. I think their injuries, tackle and at running back, have derailed it for the rest of the season. I'm also going to sell that this sounds like something Norv would just do, storming out of the offense. I think they want to go to Pat Shurmur's offense that he ran with Sam Bradford before, and it sounds more like he is being politely shoved to the side.
KB, your read on it?
Well, you got to be sympathetic to the injuries that the offensive side of the ball has suffered, which is cleaned out in Norv's cupboard. But you've also got to be sympathetic to this decision because you've got one of the best defensive, if not the best defense in the league. You've got to score more than 10 points, which is all they've done the last couple of weeks. And you've got two players in Patterson and Diggs who, if they can get the ball in short order, can do a lot of things with it. And they just don't seem to have a very creative offense right now to do that.
Kate Fagan?
You could point to injuries as an excuse for Norv Turner, but what you can't excuse is the lack of ingenuity within that offense and the fact that with that weak offensive line, they're not running more quick hit, quick pass plays for Bradford. There just hasn't been a kind of reinvention of the offense that's necessary to pair with that defense.
How about you, Ramona Shelburne?
Well, listen, they're 31st out of 32 teams in total yards and rushing yards. So you can see why you've gotten to this point, even though they got that 5-2 record. But when you I don't know Norv and I don't know the situation there, but I do know how to read between the lines. And when you have a mid-season resigning in the middle of the week like this, that says he is not comfortable with his place in the organization. If they want to run somebody else's offense, for a guy with a resume like Norv has, you got to go. And that's pride talking, not just rage.
We got to go right now, and that's not pride talking. We got a producer in my ear. We'll move on. You had 23 hours to marinate the first college football playoff ranking. You know, one loss Texas A&M is 4, and undefeated Washington is 5. Ramona, buy or sell that logic, or buy or sell the manufactured drama and SEC bias?
I'm totally buying the manufactured drama. Look, you can see obviously what the committee did here. We'll justify this by saying they have the worst record against of FBS schools against non-FBS schools of anyone, right? But you'll look at the schedule and say, oh, they're going to have to earn it. Every single week we're going to have some drama as the rankings get released. Of course this is manufactured drama.
Kalisha?
I'm buying that there's some manufacturing to it, but I'm also buying that there's some honesty to it. A&M has played a very tough schedule, and their one loss is the hardest thing you can do. Go play at Alabama. They led them in the third quarter. Washington over time should pass them, but if A&M beats LSU, I don't know that that's 100% certain.
Blackistone?
As we all know, the entire system is rigged. This is a ridiculous ranking to come out. Washington went to Utah last week. I told you that was going to be a tough place for them to win, and they pulled it off anyway. They still have a donut. This is disrespect to Bill Plaschke's Pac-12. Come on. Give them a little love. One of the best Washington teams we've seen in a long time.
Kate Fagan?
I'm going to buy that this is manufactured because I'm selling the logic. Because the implication here is that Washington would do better against somebody like Alabama, which Texas A&M played. But we've actually seen the results of Texas A&M playing Alabama, and they lost by 17 points.
Ooh, 19-point loss. Buy or sell 2, Ben Simmons in the documentary One and Done, which will air on Showtime Friday night. I'm here to play. I'm not here to go to school. Coach said we need to make up a punishment if you miss another, and I missed my next class about preparing for better study habits. I'm going to the NBA next season. Why bull bleep if it's not going to help me? And the NCAA is really effed up. Everybody's making money except the players. Tim, I know we just have it on paper. You don't hear his emphasis and tone, but how does Simmons sound to you?
It's just a bad look. I mean, people aren't going to look at it like how it works for every college student. They're going to say, this is a guy that just got a $20 million Nike contract. All he really had to do was go to school at LSU for 1 year. It's not that hard thing to do, and he doesn't have to do that. You can go play in Europe. You can go play in D leagues. You can do other things. It's not that bad of an option.
KB?
Yeah, but everybody else is there, and I just love the fact that he sounds like a liberated college athlete who we're hearing from more and more these days, like Nigel Hayes walking around with the sign, I'm a broke college athlete. This is absolutely great. More guys need to step up and say it, and I assume...
So you think he sounds great here? You think he sounds liberated? Kate, do you agree with that?
Well, I think what I'm buying about him is that he sounds like a guy who's from Australia, who's really confused about why we've tied big money sports to our universities. In the same way, it makes no sense that we tie our health insurance to our jobs. Sometimes it takes an outsider to feel how baffling all of that is.
Ramona Shelburne.
Yeah, he's from Australia, but he went to high school in Florida. So I think he understands the AAU system and our college system. What he sounds like, I was okay with him taking on the NCAA. But the second quote about where his coach said, we're going to have to come up with a punishment if you don't do it, now you're disrespecting your coach. And that, when you look at how LSU played last year and they didn't make the postseason with that team, with Ben Simmons, #1 overall pick, sounds disrespectful. Sounds like a guy who can't even find the strength within him to say, I just want to win just for winning's sake.
Buy or sell 4, Klay Thompson. Ice cold. 0 for 7 from 3 last night. 0 for 13 in his last 2 games. 3 for 28 this season. Buy or sell an eyebrow raised here, Kevin, at the start for Thompson.
No, I'm going to sell it. You remember they had a bad shooting game, he and Curry, in game 1 of the finals, and Kerr was asked about it, and Kerr was like, just let him keep shooting. Sooner or later, get out of it. Look, that's what he does for a living. I'm sure they'll start.
Okay, but don't even bring up the finals if you're talking about Golden State. Let me ask you, Kate, if you had to say it's one, is this more about Durant being on the floor or more about the NBA Finals hangover?
Well, I think it's more about the fact that Klay Thompson has been and gone through streaks like this before, so neither of those things. I mean, you can look at last season, he had stretches of going 1 for 15, so it certainly looks worse that it's the first few games of the year, but he's going to have a 7 for 9 game, and we won't be talking about it.
Same question for you, Ramona. Could it be more about Durant being on the floor and the growing pains there, or just that he is off?
I definitely think it's about Durant being on the floor, and it's going to take some time for them, both offensively and defensively. And I think with Klay right now, he looks defensively off, and that's more concerning to me than he looks offensively, because you're going to miss shots. When you're a shooter, you just keep shooting, you'll work your way through it. He's done enough in this league to show that he's a shooter, and you can trust in that. Defensively, though, is the part where it's baffling to me why he doesn't look like the Klay Thompson first-team All-NBA defense.
Kalish, how about you?
I think it's because Durant's on the floor, and Durant being on the floor on that team is going to be weird for those 3 shooters, for himself, for Curry and Thompson, for a long time. And for right now, Thompson's probably not getting the shots he likes to get. It's just a strange circumstance.
Strange circumstance right now for Tim Kalish. He's getting a lightning bolt. And Kate Fagan, your 100th career show. Congratulations. Shelburne, Blackistone. Showdown next.
Hey everybody, Scott Burnside, ESPN.com here on the latest edition of Hockey Today, the podcast. We hear from New Jersey Devils captain Andy Green, talking about the Devils' surprising start, and Milan Lucic of the Edmonton Oilers joins us.
Despite poor results in return of man-to-man defense, Syracuse players expect to use it again. Syracuse.com. Ramona Shelburne, are you ready for a world where Boeheim plays man-to-man? And you think Jim Boeheim's ready for that world?
No, I don't even recognize this. Like, what is Syracuse without that zone defense that they play? That is Jim Boeheim's standard. I can't even process what the world is like without that.
Look, I know that Jim Boeheim has been coaching since the bicentennial head coach. Is that amazing? But I love a guy who's willing to, you know what, I'm going to throw my playbook out the window and try something different, man to man. That's really where basketball is. Who likes a zone anyway?
They were down 12 yesterday to Indiana of Pennsylvania, a school from a state that's not even in the state. I don't know. Split the point. We'll move on. Showdown 2. He called himself the process. And now he's being introduced as the process. Where are you on the nickname and where are you on the announcer introducing like that, Kevin?
Oh, I'm thumbs down on this. First of all, you have to earn a nickname. You have to do something that gives you the nickname. You can't give it to yourself. Louis Overby gave Earl Monroe the nickname The Pearl. He was a great sports writer in Winston-Salem at the time. That's the way you get your nickname. That's the way AI got the nickname The Answer. He didn't name himself that. He earned it.
Yeah, thumbs up on that, and he did earn that nickname because he sat next to Sam Hinkie for 2 years listening to every reason why they had the process. Like, he knows the process inside and out the same way Sam Hinkie knows it, and I just love the idea that the franchise player of the Philadelphia 76ers, who are trying to move on from the Sam Hinkie era, has now nicknamed himself the process, and they have to introduce themselves that way.
Yeah, that's kind of meta. I love it. I love if everybody gets their nicknames announced like it's a boxing match going onto the court. The Master of Disaster, the Count of Monte Fisto. Shelburne, we got to come up with a nickname for you, Momo. You're getting the win.
Oh, my FaceTime is about Game 7. I'm going to spend all afternoon reading about all the different curses.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm reading about the curse of Rocket Calavito. I'm reading about the Billy Goat curse. We have all afternoon to study the historic rivalries and the historic curses that are at stake tonight, and one of which will end tonight. So excited. I've only been to 2 Game 7s for a championship in my life, both in the NBA. I think this is going to be a fantastic World Series finish tonight. And one of the curses ends.
That's the mood I was trying to get in. There we go. That's the excitement.
There we
You
go.
think it's going to be an all-timer, right? There have been 4 walk-off Game 7s all-time. Mazeroski, 97. We don't want to talk about that. From Cleveland. And then 2001 with Luis Gonzalez. And Gene Larkin at 91 as well. We'll see if it happens tonight. 23.5-hour break. We'll see you tomorrow.
Number 1 ranked Alabama heads to Death Valley for a huge SEC showdown against LSU.
Snap, fumble, Alabama's got the football.
Coverage begins Saturday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.